Next, from Springfield, TERESA Haley, the president of the NAACP Illinois State Conference, and James KRUGER, the president of the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police, hold a press conference to discuss the organization's joint movement to build trust between police and communities of color. This runs about 30 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Moore. I wear a lot of different hats, but today I'm wearing a hat of the NAACP. I am the statewide chairman of the Criminal Justice Committee for the NAACP, and I've had the pleasure for the last 2 years of working with this group, both groups, and having a front row seat and seeing the development of what's going to happen here today. So I want to thank all of you for gathering with us to mark this historic occasion. It's an honor to welcome you into this chamber that is already known as a birthplace for leadership in service of unity. When Abraham Lincoln gave his House divided speech, he did so against the backdrop of a national division that split this country in two. It's with the same call of leadership that we gather here to mark an occasion of unity today between these two organizations and the communities. And with that, I will invite the representatives of the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police and the NAACP Illinois State Conference to deliver their remarks.
Thank you. My name is James KRUGER. I'm the current Chief of Police of the Village of Oak Brook and the President of the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police. About 4 months after the situation erupted in and near Ferguson, Missouri, my predecessor, past President Chief Frank Kaminsky of the Park Ridge Police Department, who's with us here this afternoon, began to reach out to the NAACP State Conference and sent a letter to the then President, Mr. George Mitchell, requesting that the two of them meet to discuss things. We'd like to have that kind of conversation with African Americans have been asking for, he wrote, and he received a very warm response. As protests and confrontations rippled throughout the country, both the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police and the NAACP determined we would forge a partnership built on trust, because no relationship is possible without trust, and no good relationship is possible without trust and communication between parties. And so we met again, and through changes in leadership, we continue to meet. What we learned was that the more we work together, the more we understand that we all want the very same thing: to live in safe communities where everyone can live out the American dream and live up to their full potential. To do that, both law enforcement and all the people we serve need to broaden our sense of community, rebuild trust, and commit to shared values. So with the NAACP, we commenced on a journey together by conducting 8 joint gatherings of different kinds across the state of Illinois, involving hundreds of leaders from law enforcement and communities of color. The conversations resulted in new ideas and a stronger than ever commitment to working together to grow trust, improving relationships, and keeping our communities safe. As I began my tenure last year, this became one of my major priorities when taking office, in building those lasting relationships built on trust and sincerity and mutual understanding that only comes about by living together and working together and talking together and understanding each other's perspective. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to TERESA to talk more about our commitment to those shared principles.
Thank you. The NAACP is so excited to be here today. As you know, we are the oldest, the boldest, the most loved, and the most hated civil rights organization in the world. But that's a lot for us to be proud of. And to do this today right here in Springfield, Illinois is hysterical in itself. Historical. We are getting ready to celebrate or commemorate the 110th anniversary of the 1908 race riots that took place right here in Springfield, Illinois, that led to the establishment of the NAACP. So when we're talking about some of our shared principles and coming together and trying to come up with some things, we wanted to make sure that we addressed issues like diversity. What is diversity? What is unity? The word unity comes from community, and we all have to live together. When Ferguson took place, some of the things that we did right here in Springfield immediately, we held a town hall meeting. We had over 400 people to come out and talk about their concerns. Because what happened in Ferguson, we did not want to happen right here in Springfield, Illinois, or any place in the United States, so we took an active role. In developing these principles, we wanted to look at the nation's history. We wanted to talk about the NAACP from a state standard and statewide what was happening with law enforcement agencies. It was to declare that we come up with common goals and principles as we move forward. I am going to take some time to summarize some of those principles, and a full copy of the resolution between the NAACP and the Illinois Chiefs of Police Association are committed to. Valuing life. What does that mean? Every life of every color, of every creed is important to both organizations. So we want to make sure that we preserve and we value life. We want to recognize all persons to be treated with dignity and respect. We want to make sure that we're doing everything possible throughout the state of Illinois to change the stereotypes, the biases that people have about Black people and police officers throughout this country, and especially in our own backyard. We want to make sure that we're endorsing the 4 pillars of the procedural justice. And what does that look like? Fairness, having a voice, transparency for all of us in this country and all of us throughout Illinois. Endorsing the values of community policing. What is community policing? When you see something, say something. It does not mean that you're a snitch. It means that you simply care about your community and care about the people around you. So we wanted to develop and eliminate some of the racial tension. And how do we do that? Through talking. We developed a series called Let's Talk. And the first time we did it at the security conference in Tinley Park a couple of years ago, we had chiefs of police to come in, Black and white. We had NAACP leadership to come in and talk about those differences. We rolled up our sleeves. We said any question is not a dumb question. Any question that you have about our community, about our culture, let's break down the stereotypes and let's break down those barriers. We were able to do that. So then we went on and say, what is diversity? How do we begin to understand diversity as it relates to all of our communities? Because again, we have to live together and we have to work together. We want to make sure that we are committed to de-escalation training, not only for police officers, but for members of our communities. We want you to know, as Bob will probably talk about in the 10 rules, what do you do? What's respectful and what's not respectful when you're stopped by a police officer? So we're going to continue to do this training and to do the partnership throughout the state of Illinois. This is a start for us, and we're hoping that the other states are paying attention, will pick up these principles and help us to move this agenda forward. Thank you all so much.
I'm Ed Wojcicki, the Executive Director of the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police. Been in conversations with all of these people over a period of years, and what they've talked about is these shared principles that we've developed, and they're going to sign the documents. But what you don't see is all of the trust that has been built up as we've had all these conversations, as dozens and dozens of people have met. We did a lot of leadership level meetings deliberately so that we could have reasonable conversations and candid conversations. And as I said, what you don't see is the trust that has been built up and that will continue to be built as we move forward, and that's our desire. So I do want to thank people from the Mayor's Office of the City of Springfield for being here today and joining us today. I want to thank people from coming from different parts of the state. You can see most of our guys, they have uniforms on. The one guy doesn't, but the rest of them do. And I want to thank our partners from the NAACP who are here today. It's really been wonderful to have these conversations, and we want them to continue. So with that, I do invite the 2 presidents to go on to the dais behind me and signed the affirmation of our shared principles.
How do we know that this is going to be carried out at the front lines? I can imagine a cop on the street saying, oh yeah, when's the last time the chief got shot at? Or, you know, the other side of the equation, oh, my family's never been pulled over in years. So how do we know it's going to be as good on the street as you just said it's going to be here?
Well, our association speaks for its 1,300 members, police executives throughout the state of Illinois. And I can tell you through the leadership of those executives is that that's the leadership that's going to be exuded, that we are going to live by these principles. And this is really what we believe in. Really what we're doing is we're basically articulating what we believe in our profession and our code of ethics to begin with. So this isn't a departure from anything that what is being trained in our academies and what is being spoken about in our roll calls and what is trained our officers to do right today as it is.
And what the NAACP is going to do is to continue to educate our community and have our branches to have discussions during their annual meetings and their monthly and our quarterly meetings.
Can you go through maybe some of the bullet points of what the most significant principles in this shared document are that you think will be most impactful on the streets when it comes to the relationships between police and communities?
For the NAACP, it would be the de-escalation training, because we believe that officers are supposed to protect and serve, not hurt and harm. And if you are afraid of someone that you're pulling over and that you're coming up on and you have a gun, we don't want you, the first thing you do is to shoot. We want you to try to de-escalate that situation through the appropriate training. And when you see something, say something, and if you don't feel comfortable, call for backup.
Yeah, and we would certainly agree with that. Certainly, law enforcement officers are very concerned with the sanctity of life and also believe in de-escalation strategies. Certainly, that's a matter of safety, not only for the community, but also safety for the officers as well. So we're committed to that. We're committed to procedural justice because we believe everyone should have a voice in giving people the opportunity to speak and be heard so that way they're better understood. What we have found throughout the President's 21st Century Commission on Policing and teaching procedural justice, which is required by state statute now as well, is that our officers understand that that's not just happens in the community, but also happens within our organizations too. So that way we as police leaders can model that type of behavior within our organizations, so that way that's what the expectation is out into the community.
Then the other thing that's important to the national NAACP is to do community policing. So we want to see more of our community members to get involved. Again, when you see something, say something. We want our community members to do ride-alongs with our police officers. If there are any type of camps or workshops that they're having on a more regular basis, we want people who look like me to participate in those things. So when you're complaining about something that an officer does, if you understand his or her role and their responsibility and what's law and what isn't law, you'll have a better understanding moving forward.
I think along with that, one of the things that both organizations have talked about at length too, and we're really committed to, is really the diversity in recruiting and promotion. And it's very important to us. So that way we do have all segments of the community that are involved and are represented in law enforcement. And we also understand that that's a collaborative effort as well. As much as law enforcement wants to outreach to the community in order to, so that way there's an understanding that we want persons of diversity to join our ranks, is that we also want the help and enlist the help of the community to encourage that.
On that issue with recruiting minorities and whatnot, one of the things I hear is that there's not enough minorities applying for the job. Can you both address that issue when it comes to bringing in more diverse police force for these communities?
From a historical perspective here in Springfield, Illinois, that has been the problem in the past. But our police chief sitting right over there, Kenny Winslow, works really closely with the NAACP and other Black historical organizations such as sororities and fraternities, Masons and Eastern Stars, to get out the word. Also, too, in their posting and their advertising, they make sure that people who look like me, Black people, brown people, are also advertised in those promotional materials to let people know that the community is welcome to apply for those jobs. One of the things that our mayor did, which was very helpful, to say if you are a Springfield police officer, you must live in the residency, you must live in our community. We don't need outsiders coming in, policing our community, and then going back home to their communities. We need them to be a part of our community.
That was actually one of the really great discussions that we had as a group to talk about minority recruitment, and also kind of an understanding of what a lot of the agencies in Illinois are faced, because some are home rule and some are non-home rule communities, and the non-home rule communities have limited opportunities as far as trying to change the method of hiring other than what's in state statute. But certainly what we are doing and what we pledge to do is to continue to encourage it and to outreach into the community, because we want everyone to apply.
When you listen to police radio, the suspect is always, he's either white or black, he's always 6 feet 180. Glad I'm not 6 feet tall. What's the difference between pulling someone over who matches the description and racial profiling?
Well, I think that comes for a larger conversation than just what I can answer in just a few moments. Law enforcement is a very difficult and very challenging job, and I think what we do is that we try to work with the information that we have. Certainly when law enforcement is called to the scene of an incident, they're called by the same members of the community that are looking for our help and looking for our support, and we're working with the information we have. I think there's certainly, I think when you talk about the terminology of racial profiling, I think that whole connotation is meant to suggest that someone is being pulled over because of those characteristics, not because they match the description of somebody that may be suspected of a crime. And those are two completely different things.
What are some of the assessment tools that you're going to implement, and how often?
I'm sorry.
How the program is going?
Well, I think one of the things, and I had mentioned it earlier, is that I think this is not the culmination. This is really the beginning. I mean, what was really beneficial is that not that we got to this wonderful document that we were both able to sign today, but the dialogue and the relationships and how we got here, and developing those relationships with each other. And I think that's an ongoing thing that continues. So I think we have to look at it, and continue to visit this document. It should be a living, organic document. And we see that when changes either need to be made, or when we need to look at how we're doing things, or to make sure that we continue that communication back and forth.
And the other thing that we do is we work with NOBO. And when you think about black officers, I've talked to several black officers, especially chiefs of police in the Chicagoland area. One of the things that they brought out at the conference, as long as they're in uniform, they're respected. But as soon as they take off that uniform and they're driving from the south side of Chicago out west, they're oftentimes pulled over like everyone else, and they fear for their lives. And some of their white colleagues were really surprised to hear this. They were like, "You're a police chief, why would you be feared for your life?" Well, when he or she is not in uniform, they're just another black person riding down the street. So we want to deal with racial profiling. In the city of Springfield, it's a problem. We had someone come over from the Western Illinois University and actually did a study of driving while black. And it's no surprise to us, this is great Abraham Lincoln's hometown. But we want to make race relations better, and it starts by communication, and it starts by being open and totally honest with one another about our fears and our beliefs.
You mentioned this kind of spurred out of what happened in Ferguson. We've seen other instances around the country where a minority may get shot and killed by a police officer, and the unrest that spurs out of that seems to be because of lack of accountability for those actions of police officers. What's the chiefs of police take on addressing that issue and making sure that bad actors within law enforcement, be it police-involved shootings or dropping guns or drugs or whatever it may be, what's the Illinois chiefs of police looking at to make sure that there is that level of accountability across?
Well, certainly as an association, and I think as a profession, we're very committed to excellence within our organizations. The association has a very stringent accreditation program in order to have model policies to be able to demonstrate that our agencies are operating the way they should be and what's accepted practices in the law enforcement profession. Are there aberrations that occur? Certainly. Are there issues that need to be addressed? Absolutely. But I don't know any of police executives, including the ones sitting here, would want bad actors in their organization or allow them to stay. We do have to work within the framework of state law, within collective bargaining rights, and try to work within that, but also continue to hold our people accountable. And I think we hold ourselves accountable and demonstrate that and model that to the rank and file officers.
Teresa, to kind of follow up on that, from the community's perspective, how do you get across to the community that, hey, when these incidents happen, don't knee-jerk react, take time, take a breath? I mean, is that part of the conversation?
That is part of the conversation, and we do that not only through town hall meetings. We do it in our churches, we do it in our sororities and our fraternities. We ask our community members to go home and talk to your family members about their rights and knowing what to do, but at the same time still being respectful, because we want you to live. Your life is most important. And I read an article today that just happened out in Sacramento, a 22-year-old black man gunned down in the back. And I was horrified, and it really bothered me, and I said how timely that we're getting ready to do this, and we're still dealing with this on a daily basis around the country. We want to tell our black community, especially our black males, and now even our females, that your life is the most important thing. So be respectful, and the key is to get home. If you get home, you can say something and you can report it and you can tell someone, like the NAACP, and we can take a national stand. We can also meet with our legislators to talk about the issues in our communities and try to increase and strengthen the laws and put more teeth in the laws that are there. I too am a union member and I support unions, but sometimes there are good people and there are bad people in the union. And when you have a bad officer, we expect you as the police chief to handle him or her. If that means firing them, fire them. Let them fight with their union to get their job back, because that's what we pay our dues for.
How do we get, is there bad actors, if you say the police force? That's going to happen in any organization. Are there other outreaches to the black community to say, hey, how do we interact with the police officers so that we're not making them feel unwanted or be fearful, so that we can build a bridge of trust, which is, I think, what you're trying to do? What is the NAACP going to be saying to your community as far as what you would want to achieve from your?
Well, we'll have workshops, more and more workshops, town hall meetings. It's education, and reinforcing what we're telling people in our community to do. Bob Moore here has a wonderful program talking about the 10 rules. We're doing that around the state. We're doing that at our state conventions. We're doing those things at our quarterly meetings.
When you say tell them what to do, just to give a little bit so people will know specifically, what are some of the things that you would tell them?
Well, first we want them to breathe. Take a breath, slow down, document everything, think about your life, make sure you get home safely, contact the authorities, contact our organization, because if it's not reported and you didn't document, it didn't happen. It's simply your word against that individual. But if you can document it and you can come to our branch meetings and tell your side of the story, because we realize that there's 2 or 3 sides of the story and then there's the truth. We can help you get to the bottom of whatever that issue might be. And that gives that individual security. That gives them a sense of accomplishment, because they know that an organization such as the NAACP is fighting on their behalf.
Is there a general feel in the black community, I don't know, that there's not enough policing in their communities or too much?
It depends on where you live. I live on the southeast side of Springfield, and in my neighborhood we say we have just enough. But when I drive over to church on Sundays and choir rehearsal like tonight, I see too many police officers, and I wonder why they're all congregated on one side of the town where poor black folks and brown folks live, as opposed to out west where rich white folks live. Yes, sir.
I was going to say, do you have any comment on that?
Just one of the things that we found through our dialogue and meeting, and one of the things the Illinois Chiefs did a few months ago, had found out that there are some of these wonderful grassroots organizations that are in pockets all around the state, in specific counties or communities. And what we did is we had a meeting and brought all of those together on what's working in their community, where members of the community and law enforcement are working together already on some of these smaller grassroots initiatives, and so that way they could share and learn from each other as well, and found that that's been very beneficial.
And how will you measure success, and when
Well, I think it's an ongoing project, isn't it? You know, and part of it is the ongoing project of life. And I think that we have to continue to work hard and do a good job of communicating and building relationships.
Are there metrics? Are we going to measure by a drop in homicides, a drop in crime? What should we measure?
I think it's all of the above. I think it's people interacting with each other. I think it's really just getting together and breaking down those barriers, really dealing with those stereotypes. This gentleman from Carbondale had a question.
Yes, well, first let me commend you all. I think this initiative is just absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
And what I'm wondering is, have you given any thought to this point of pushing this down, having many confabs as this one in the respective communities around the state? Because I think with this leadership, if we can push it to the respective township, counties, townships where the branches are, where your police chiefs are, it'd be absolutely marvelous. And then we can make it work and answer all of the questions these gentlemen are asking.
We have done...
That's where the rubber hits the road.
Absolutely. We have had conversations from Cairo to Chicago. So that's about as far down south as you can go and as far up north that you can go. So this is an ongoing process for all of us. And we want to continue to grow and build on this process. We're going to take this to our state convention, our national convention, and we're asking other states to start doing these types of meetings and come up with their own principles. These aren't principles that we just developed overnight. It's taken 4 years to get to this point.
From my chief to this chief.
Absolutely.
Look, let's partner in Carbondale.
Absolutely.
Something like this so we can make Carbondale better.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And as I had mentioned, our association represents 1,300 members from all across the state. And we've had several cover story articles in our Command magazine, continue to talk about it at our meetings, and it'll, of course, be talked about again at our state conference that'll be held next month as well.